Very friendly meeting. No, John, I haven't gone in.
You want to move this way, Mom, so we go Sunday? You all right?
Oh, so-
I didn't know what they were talking about, but it is just.
You know what, smart, the
Okay.
video camera
They're like
stopped the other
chickens.
night, and we were on boarding houses, and John Ryan was going for.
Good evening.
Right.
About
Some bordel.
Yeah, poor John took
Well
the brunt of that, didn't he?
Don't
And then the video
I
camera
want you to
stopped, and I
do
said,
the
oh,
right
here
thing.
we
But you know what, I think he performed quite admirably considering that sun
Doing
was
the work.
beating on his face.
That's probably why he wanted to go.
I haven't done this in like 20 years.
Okay, guys.
That's probably when he said that. I'm going to the LGLA.
That's what he, that's.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, well, sure it'll be fine.
Okay.
Are we all ready?
Yes.
Okay. Let's call the March 25th Finance Advisory and Audit Committee meeting to order. Roll call.
Chair Chu,
Here.
Vice Chair Ryan. Here. Committee Member Johnston.
Here.
Committee Member Miller.
Here.
Committee Member Standish.
Here.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Cheryl, second by Gina. Any discussion? All those in favor, saying by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. We have 5-0 for a long time.
No, we
Thank you,
haven't.
and for input.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Okay, number 4, old business, discussion relative to implementation of cost recovery fee schedule.
Consent agenda first, right? There's nothing?
Nothing.
Well, where's the minute stuff?
I just read the agenda.
4B.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So A is cost recovery.
Yeah.
Okay, as Mr. Underwood has previously identified, we put all the items that are currently pending under old business to keep them on the agenda. On item A, cost recovery fee schedule, we are currently working on amendments to the cost recovery ordinance and to developing a initial fee schedule as it relates to cost recovery. Don't want to use the word fee schedule because that's not really what it would be. It will just be
Cost
It'll
recovery.
be the introductory, basically payment in the cost recovery.
It's like a town ordinance based on some percentage of the gross estimate.
Keep going.
So you will bring it back to us for review?
Well, we're ready. We'll have to act.
Okay.
Hopefully by next meeting.
Okay. Any questions?
Push this. That's it.
I think the only, it's not a question, or maybe it isn't, and a comment.
Comment?
When we talk about cost recovery, I mean, there's different things that can happen in this town. You can have the high commercial projects, and you can have a small individual situation, neighbor to neighbor. And it just seems, even if it's neighbor to neighbor, a simple thing can turn into a large dollar amount. You know, and in some other towns, you can call them, and you just call the town and say, hey, this is happening. And a small call gets made and there's no big fine. So I guess my question is, where's the balance going to be when it's how do you know, when it's a small issue or when you ask for large money up front? I guess that's my concern, that the small residential issues don't turn into large unnecessary fines.
Well, are you referring now to code enforcement, or are you referring to actual development applications?
Well, it seems
It
to
sounds
me
like
that
you're
it seems to me that cost recovery covers both issues, does it not?
No, not. What happens under code enforcement is that administrative costs as a result of prosecuting the case and doing all the necessary inspections and paperwork, etc., gets aggregated. And then at the end of the case, after we take it to the special magistrate, let's say we get an order, somebody was guilty, and a fine is assessed, ultimately a lien. Also in conjunction with that, we'll put in for the magistrate to do another finding relative to the administrative costs. And probably the best example I could give you is in the case of Todd McClendon a few months back, where he had $3,000 in costs, and the town council actually paid it.
Well, here's another example. My neighbor Beck Hislop. Okay, I mean, I see it in here. And it was just an issue of the neighbor to neighbor saying, hey, is there structure near my driveway? And I don't know the dollar amounts, but I just see a large dollar amount sitting in the books. So does that turn into a large issue too?
Well, in that case.
And that's a code enforcement example, right?
Well, no, that one was actually a development application for a variance.
Even though they're ag.
Well,
See, and I guess that's where we have so
all
many
right.
things in this town.
On
And
that
let me
one,
not get into a whole
Let me
different
explain
discussion.
that. On that one, we have evidence where the garage was not housing ag-related vehicles. They were housing a trailer, travel trailer, and another vehicle. And then they recently came back and said, oh, we're using it for ag and we're putting in our trailers. And so we're going to get them to give us an affidavit, and if that's the case, then what we'll do is we will refund the monies, but we're only going to refund the portion of the monies that we didn't expend in the activities we've undertaken to this point.
Right, I mean, I know the property, I know it's ag, I live right next door to it, I see all the activity. That's why I was just curious. It seems like some of the things in our town financially escalate when, and I guess that's part of the other side of the issue in this town. We have other issues, it's just,
But the answer to the first
Cost
part, the
recovery.
other part of your question is there's zero tolerance. Once you adopt a cost recovery program, everybody pays it. There is no such thing as the little guy or whatever else. I mean, the little guy may have trouble coming up with the money to pay the cost recovery, but you have to treat everybody the same or you're going to have issues.
well, you have to treat everybody the same if the rules are followed, the Florida statutes are followed correctly.
If everything is followed
Yes.
correctly.
Yes. I mean,
You
there's
may
the
remember,
other
we
side
had
of
this
that
discussion to
sentence.
some extent where Mr. Underwood raised the issue of the gun dealer as it related to a lack of cost recovery in that regard. So,
Any other questions and comments? Seeing none, let's move on to the next item, 4B.
4B, as we promised, Mr. Chair, I believe it was you particularly who had the concern.
I'm sorry, I did have something on that. I didn't have my hand up quick enough.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to-
That's fine, let's go back to the
Yes.
4A.
I guess the thing, the question that I've had in my mind, about the way we're processing these various changes to the ULDC is that it seems like we've got a ULDC committee, and then we have a planning and zoning committee, and we also have the council kind of doing their own thing with the ordinance that was, and, I mean, is there overlap in these areas that for example, the ordinance for the gun, I think it was the gun, the ordinance that said, well, we're going to have 2 people, you can have 2 customers, but apparently that didn't go to the planning and zoning committee.
Yes, it did.
Did it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's right, and they
Right.
commented.
They denied it 5-0.
Yeah, they denied it, and then the council,
But see, the issue is this, when somebody wants to come in and change the ULDC because of a project that they may be considering, town is not really undertaking that, they're making the request. So if the town grants them the request to move forward, they still pay us cost recovery for the work in amending the code. That was the issue Bill brought up, because with the gun dealer, we didn't make him pay any cost recovery. Town council pretty much said, staff, process the code.
That's where I get confused.
well,
Granted, it wasn't a very large amendment, it did take a lot of time, but you're still going to have the advertising, you're going to have the attorney's time, because the attorney did the original drafting, my time in terms of everything. With
well, do we have such a thing as council initiated versus applicant initiated? I mean, I know the county does. You can have, where if the county decides that, they want to make a comprehensive plan amendment, they can do it on their own. They can do a county-initiated comprehensive plan. Or they can, whereas if an individual initiates it, then the individual has to pay. So, an example of that came up some time back when the county was, we were trying to get the county to take us back to 1 to 5. And the idea was, well, that would be something that the county would initiate, because it covers a large area, and you're not going to, there's no really fair way to, assign those costs. Do we not have a category for council initiated? where
Well-
they feel, the council feels it doesn't affect just one person, but it affects a large number of people, and you don't.
We don't have
charge
a
for
category
these.
per se, but the council can initiate a unified land development code amendment anytime they so desire. The question becomes, how does the town pay for it? Now, the management company can try to do some things, but if it's a very intricate and detailed amendment, then that's going beyond our scope.
The town
And
has-
that is why when we had our first amendment, the work authorization concept came into play. We can do it with but the council always has to recognize that if they're initiating something, then that's something the town's gonna pay, because we don't have an applicant. We have the town
Well, I think
doing a
they
basic
do
project.
understand that, don't they? I mean,
I
I
think
think
they do, I would hope they do.
If they're gonna pay it, you
Well,
know,
eventually, in the long run, they go, we are going to pay.
we're gonna pay it,
Yeah.
right.
The issue, I think the issue becomes that at any given time, any group or perceived individual initiated change can be given to the council to bring forward.
Mhm.
And if that occurs, then there's no mechanism to avert that.
Right. I will give you an example coming up in the April 2nd meeting. We have a group called Big Dog Ranch Rescue who would like to amend the text of ULDC to allow some accessory uses along with rescue for dogs. And they recognize that they're going to have to, if the council, if they get a positive reading from the council, they're going to move forward and they're going to pay for the amendment.
Yeah.
If it's not council or the town's going to pay for it, they're going to pay
They're
for
gonna
it.
pay,
Mhm.
yeah.
And that's what you
That's
told us,
the
the
way
applicant
that it
initiated.
Well,
Should be
That's what
further,
you were saying.
correct?
Yeah.
I would
yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
But I think that where some of the confusion takes place is that I think they view, the council views that, and they said this when they passed the ULTC to begin with, we're really trying to create a land use code that allows the people that have been here for a long time doing businesses that are not bothering their neighbors to continue, but which also allows us a level of control on, some of these. So, and it's difficult, it hasn't. So I think they feel like, well, the code's not perfect, but we can fix it. And they see some of these things as fixing the mistakes that were made first time around in the code.
I would agree with your statement. I would just indicate that you have to be careful when you start to do accommodation, because when you do accommodation, it usually leads to other problems and intended consequences.
I understand. I'm trying to get clarity on, what the issue is, because they, is there a problem with the commercial, application, which, the particular amendment that says that you can pretty much do whatever you want on your property in an accessory building if, as long as you don't have more than 2 or 3 customers?
You're speaking about the residential enterprise.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is there is a problem with that. And I think it has, and I've told the council that, so it's no surprise. And I am concerned that it may cause us some problems down the line, especially in defending our case against the day folks. I don't want to say too much about that, because we're on. But you're basically, opening up the town. It's kind of hard to say, we're going to be very careful what we do with land use and commercial on Okeechobee when you're allowing it throughout the town.
Yeah.
And all the reasons given, well, this guy was there 25 years, therefore we're just trying to correct this situation, I don't think is an appropriate reason to do it.
I don't think we should allow accessory.
So-
The residential enterprise.
I think it is like the planning zone. I kind of agree with the recommendation of the planning zone that was given to them.
And even the landowners the other night.
Landowners supported the planning zone group.
It would be easy to open a house of ill repute
Yes, John Ryan
based
mentioned
on
that.
that.
Suggesting.
No. I insisted.
And there is nothing the town can do to stop it.
Well, who's going to go there and collect the evidence?
Well, as long as.
I did go undercover one time, I did do that.
Actually gone undercover.
I've gone undercover and done that.
And you
As
were
long
just
as they didn't have more than 2.
But it's not-
That was hard work, they could do it,
There would be no violation.
Very
There would be no violation, so there's no reason to go undercover.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Mr. Chair,
So,
may I please make a recommendation that somebody, if we're able to move far enough to that thermostat correct it?
you need to be changed.
Man, we were waiting for, I was hanging on the statement, waiting for every word.
They just want us to keep.
Okay,
They want
any,
to preserve us.
any more comments? Please, okay, okay, let's move on to the next one regarding the meeting minutes.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, at the last meeting, you had several questions relative to the minutes, and as I promised you, we brought back a couple of different sources for you to look at. The first source is the Florida Association of City Clerks Manual. The second source we provided is actually something that was provided by our town attorney called Welcome to www.parlaypro.org. And then we just attached a memo that actually goes back to 2010 from the previous administration, but is actually on point as well. And as you'll see, all three sources will tell you that in terms of the form and content of council and board meetings, that it's basically an action minutes type program that we've kind of described to you. You don't get into trying to, and for the clerk who's doing the meeting, it's very hard to go back and start to try to attribute who said what and what's important. So basically, the bottom line, and the good one to look at really quickly if you haven't had a chance to review it, is the Parley Pro, because it tells you what you need to provide. And it's basically the setting the time, the date, and who was there, what the motion was, what the second was, if there were any major discussions or attempts to change the motion, those kinds of things. But you don't get into Mr. Smith said this, and Mr. Jones said that, and Mrs. Wilson said that. You really refrain from doing that stuff. Now we have, and maybe we've confused you, because in some of our minutes, we've tried to give you a little more than just the action minutes. But every time we've tried to do that, we've gotten in trouble for doing it. So, well, that's the point I was trying to make to you when you wanted that correction at the last minute. So we really got to be careful of doing that, because especially you can't start to invent or make up or try to make a determination what was really meant if something is not clear. So that's really what we wanted to try to show you. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Well, I noticed, I think it was on page H40 or page 5 of 111, it specifically states if a recording device is used. Well, basically, I'm not going to, but I got the impression that having a recording device is also a method of documentation and can always be referred to, which alleviates having all the detail in the minutes. My question is, how long do we keep the recordings, the videos, and things like that for?
I think the retention is 5 years.
Well, the
Ideal, I mean,
the
typically.
last thing I recall, verbal recordings are not considered public record.
Really?
The minutes that
Okay.
are approved are considered public record. I stand to be corrected by anyone here that may have a different position.
Well, she's cogitating on that. I will say that.
I believe that the recordings are kept for more than 5 years.
Right.
I worked in a city that we had kept the recordings for 40 years. What happens is
Those are the 8-track.
well, as recordings, as technology changed, there was recordings that were done in different types of instruments that you would have to continue to, but we still kept them, we didn't dispose of them.
So you
But the
always,
minutes were the actual record.
right, and if you always had the recordings if you chose to
Well,
fall back on?
especially if the council wants a verbatim transcript of an item, that's what the recordings are really basically for. Any petitioner that comes before any board, like it says they have to provide their own recording and their own transcription of the actual record if they want to use it. But as far as the town goes, the clerk would provide a verbatim transcript for a council that made that special request. That's really what the recordings are for.
And I was going to add that Pearl is exactly right. That's why you see most cities will have a little statement down on their agendas or whatever, that if you really need verbatim of the meeting, you need to bring your own,
Right, which the attorneys do.
Yeah,
That's what it
exactly.
says here.
See, there we go.
Says that on your agenda.
I did say most cities said do that, didn't I?
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just think, I did go back and watch the tape of the last meeting we didn't attend. But, you know, this is not the first time this has come up. It's come up before, and I think it really is incumbent on us and you to make sure that you're clear on whether something is an action item that should be reported for the minutes or, you know, or not. And, you know, we at one time, we were just making motions on absolutely everything, you know, and we've kind of gotten away from that. But we have to make sure that if there's something that we're asking you to do, and one member brings it up and everybody else kind of sits there, that we find out if that's what everyone wants, and if it is the consensus of the committee, and if there's an action on it, you know, or not.
Well, you know, the position of the Underwood Management Group has always been that we work at the collective will of any board or town council. And that's why we would like to see, and we're going to try to enforce and reinforce this, is a roll call vote on every motion if possible. I know some people think that tends to be overkill, but for the record purposes, you know, it can't be.
Well, if it's 5-0,
And before we took instructions from the committee, we would actually take it back to the council
Yeah.
and then say, go forth and do it, because the committees could drive you personally.
I agree with your comment. I waited the last. I actually read the material. Mrs. Spence said that something about at a minimum. So I think the question was raised by me. At the time, I felt the material that presented was not clear, and I request for clarification. However, to say the minute only say the action and the motion, I think it would not meet our requirement, because if this is correct, it's incumbent on staff and the committee to make sure the minutes is clear. Okay, going back to the material sent out, I totally agree with, if you see, with Gina touch base on page 40, if you see that paragraph that we call record of action taken, if you see that the third sentence on the page 40, I mean, and page 5 of 111. Yeah, page 5 of 111. On the record of action taken, I want to read this to you. Let's think about this, okay? I think it's 1 to the third sentence, either third or fourth. Many city clerks, however, will find that the city council, by president or by decision, has stipulated the keeping of detailed minutes to clarify or justify their action. That's what it is talking about. Whether this is done by voting machine or some form of recording, it's a decision for each council. So I would take that as a decision by this collective committee.
And we would take that to the council.
Yes. So I don't want the record to say that the minutes should only reflect the action or the motion. I think that is what I personally want. I don't think it's what you want either. So I want to clarify that. The minutes should reflect the discussion in a constructive manner, but not to burden staff to take up everything verbatim. No, we don't want that. I think the minute, as long as it's clear for major decision that we know what was the discussion focusing on, I think that's good enough. You know, we are all taxpayers. I don't want to spend somebody else's money and pay us something we don't need. So I want to be clear. Minute is not only for motion or approve or disapprove, and that's it. No, I don't think that is acceptable. And I would take exception to the introductory part. I think this part is very good. It clarifies what the committee, the board wants, to the way that it is clear what it's supposed to be. Agree?
I guess the question is, with the exception of the last meeting, was some clarification. I thought the minutes generally been acceptable.
I thought that piece was not
Well,
clear.
I understand with that exception.
Yes, yes. yes,
Generally, I think we've been
Yes.
doing it the way you wanted it
Yes.
to be.
sure, yeah,
So we're not proposing we change
yeah.
it.
Okay, that's good. But I still.
I do,
I want to reiterate, I don't want the minutes to say action be made by Cheryl, second by Elise, and been approved, and without stating what the action or the major discussion, because sometimes, deliberation will bring to different direction. It's just like the cost recovery schedule, a lot of discussion. So I hope that the minute will at least highlight a few key points, not in detail.
Well, that's why I said we have been doing that. I mean, that has been our intention. But the
Okay.
concern is if it starts to get to the point where it keeps getting nitpicked, then we're going to have to pull back and say, no, wait a minute, either we can come to some kind of meeting of the minds, or we're going to have to insist on basic minutes.
Right. I think that's fine as long as the minute.
we try, I think we try.
Okay, I think you did. Ken?
Listening to some of this discussion and then reading this paragraph here, that last sentence. In a way, I mean, Paula, sitting over there saying in one town they kept the records for 40 years on tape. Here we keep them more than 5 years. But the tape isn't the official record. It's the transcript that's been approved. But why don't we come up with a stenographer, just like in a court, where it is, whatever is said goes on the tape, and that is a permanent file of that court, and should not be a permanent file for our government.
If the council is willing to fund such an enterprise, we would have no objection.
Okay, what's the difference between one person sitting there and trying to keep up with what's being said, punching it into a computer?
Well, have you ever had a deposition?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, when they're doing that, that's not the hard part. The hard part is going back after and going through what they did when they were doing that.
Well, that's,
That's what takes the time.
yeah.
It's very.
Okay, any other discussion?
So, just so that I'm trying to make sure we have a consensus, the minutes generally are okay. We did have that clarification issue. The one thing I would say is we will always try to make sure that the minutes are clarified. But on YouTube, www.youtube.com, Waxahachie Grove, you get the video of the meetings. So if there ever is a question, you can always go there. I don't know how long YouTube keeps them out.
Okay, no discussion, I guess next time we read the minutes. Anyway, that's some other opinion. Okay.
More than you wanted to know, right, Mr. Sheriff?
I think it's not clear which use of
Well, I think it was more, when I looked at, the video of the last meeting, that the point was that, if the minutes say, the committee had discussion about an invoice, that really doesn't tell you very much. If you're going to say that, you need to say, the committee, requested additional details of specific XYZ invoice.
the purpose of the
And then town management agreed to provide. But just the committee had discussion about an invoices really doesn't have any place in any of these formats. So,
Okay, let's move on to new business, 5A. Mr. Manager. You walk us through.
Okay, those are the February financial statements. Usually, unless you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Is the new color one,
That's
not the same as the other?
That's the financial activity.
she highlighted the
Summary.
changes, it was just the percentages that were wrong. Percentages got left out. Or whatever. I do not.
I think we'd like them to quiz the site right now.
I thought, no, I
It's
was
more
in
fun.
earlier.
Yeah, it's more fun that way.
Oh, it's more fun, you like it?
When you quiz us, sure. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Aha, and Pearl is here.
I can update the committee on one thing. I did some research independent research on an invoice that was discussed a couple of meetings ago. And I found out what a rubber tire backhoe cleaning is, if anyone actually wants to know
Yes.
why it was written that way. If you order a backhoe to go clean out a canal, normally you're gonna get a backhoe that has the metal tracks. But if you are going to be doing the cleaning from an OGM road, you don't want a metal track on your backhoe. You want a rubber track on your backhoe. So rubber track backhoes cost, they're at a different rate than regular backhoes. And so that's why it was differentiated that way on the invoice, because they were cleaning the canal from an OGM road and did not want to tear it up.
Because them steel tracks will do that.
I just, thought you would all.
That's
enjoy
good.
So
that.
when you summarize a few keyword, people could be true, because I know that we heard a story about a judge in Broward County courthouse, and then he wrote a note to raise at the deputy and said falling. He said blind, falling, urgent. So they thought he had a heart attack. So they called the ambulance. What happened was the window blind was falling. So I mean, a few keywords that could be construed. So emergency crew come in. The window blind was falling. He went down blind, falling, urgent.
Right, and when I had
So
seen the rubber tire, I thought it was rubber tires we were taking
I did too.
out.
I thought the same
Right.
thing. I mean,
And that's why we inquired, because I thought it was a solid.
And this is a
Waste.
real story about a judge. Actually, he wrote it note. So anyway, keywords. Please make sure
Well, it was perfectly clear to the person who
our
provided the
member,
invoice.
our vice chair said that need to be clear to us, to the reader. I use the word. Okay. Let's look at any other thing that Mr. Manager you want us to know?
No, sir, nothing exciting to report. Just,
Okay.
if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Virginia, you have no question?
I'll wait for everyone else. No, I have none.
It really looks pretty good.
I have, well, actually, I just have one. Page 47 of 111. Will you like it, Matt, please?
I do.
In the professional services, Bert J. Harris claim.
Mhm.
And it's not for much money, but claim for what? Claim for a dog, a cat, a bird?
This is the day matter, and what has happened is the attorneys for Mr. Day have filed a Bert Harris claim.
Oh, with the
So,
property.
yeah, and I think that's for Cirillo, isn't it?
Yeah, that's.
Yes,
that's
it's
fine.
from
Yeah,
his
and
invoice.
what it is Bert Harris is a,
Yeah, I read that
where
with the other
basically, yeah,
stuff going on.
we find it kind of ironic and funny that they're making this claim, because normally you have to have the land use first, and then do something to the property owner so that there's an inordinate burden placed on him, and he's not getting the valuation that he thought he had by virtue of his land use. In this case, they didn't have the land, they didn't have the land use in place first, so, but they're making the claim, we have to do all the particulars associated with it to ensure that, we move forward.
Any other questions? Well, speaking of payment, I do have a question, something general. I think last meeting, I was going to ask this question, I forgot, that we saw checks writing to a vendor, someone. I saw the signature on the signatory on the check. And I know it's 2 council members, right? How do we make it, like this time will be Mr. Ma, Mr. Bill?
Whoever answers the
You mean not
phone.
the same people all the time?
I
It's
know.
whoever answers.
Do we have a rule that who should be signing the check?
We do try to rotate them, however, some council members are constrained by virtue of either if they're working, or so, as Bill just said, it's not, I think, scientific, whoever can get in to sign the check so that, it's not being held up. Now, having said that, we try to make sure that's not the same 2 council members every month, every check period, signing.
Sometimes it happens that way because they're.
Sometimes it happens that way, yes.
Whoever walks in the door first.
Certain council members have greater availability than others, and that's just the way it works out.
How does the community feel about this signing check like on meetings?
I don't know, would you wanna be, if you were busy, would you wanna be called away from what you were doing to sign a check if I was more readily available than you?
You have authorized signers on the account, correct? How many authorized signers do you have?
Five.
Five.
Whoever's on the council.
And they've all been vetted, verified, legally placed on that account.
They're all called.
I know that, even people who have different will, like, I don't usually read your numbers because I trust you guys. She reads it because there's something that she prefer to read it. So I would think signatory would be the same. Some council members may review in detail, some may not. I don't want the two council members, I don't know who are those, who never review, check the numbers. I think that we miss out the signatories review. I mean, I don't know.
They don't have the council members do the checks I do. I don't use the same council members. I keep the same council member for a month rotation, and I switch out. I never have a council member, one that reviews and one that doesn't look. I always have, I don't ever have two that don't look. Do you understand? I have one that's very detailed, and I have one that,
Because
Not so detailed.
I never have two of the same.
because that, no, I'm not trying to question you.
Oh, I
I'm
know.
thinking, I'm for the logic. If somebody said that whoever is available when I call will
No,
come,
I,
is it not correct or am I wrong?
I have a rotation. I have a rotation schedule for my council.
Okay.
If I can't get the one I want, then I have to go to the next. But only if I can't find the one I want. Sometimes I'll put off signing checks for 2 days till the person that's on my rotation is available. What I don't allow, or I don't want, is, I want, before we got here, it was the same people signing the checks over and over again. We started the rotation process. I also don't like, we have council members that are very detailed, we have council members that are medium detailed, we have council members that
No detail.
feel comfortable with everything that we present. I personally, even with the ones that have comfort with everything we present, I sit with them and I have all the documents and all the invoices and I make them look, I explain every check as they're signing because I want them to be as knowledgeable about that check as I am when they're signing it. Because they're John Henry's on the, and I think for the last year and a half, they understand the significance of their signature on those checks and they're certifying and they're saying everything's okay. So I think the council really has done a really wonderful job, all 5 of them. Some of them are a little faster than the others. Some of them, I can't get some of them to sign a check. I have to go back and do more work before they'll even consider signing a check. That happens a lot.
I don't think the councilman should be your gatekeeper for the check approval, meaning they should not be like you, like, oh, this is wrong, this is right. I think it's incumbent on Mr. Town Manager.
Well, he approves everything
Okay.
before it ever goes to
Yeah.
the council.
And then the council will be just looking at it, make sure that he approves it. I think
Well,
that's
we
what
have a
we want.
step. We have somebody that's going to print the checks.
Okay.
There's somebody that's going to approve the invoices. Then we have somebody that submits the invoices for processing. Then we have another person that prints the checks. And then we have the third person, the other person that picks the checks from the print and puts them together. Then I take them to the council. But by the time I get them to go to the council, it's gone through 4 hands.
So who usually sign the check right now?
Well, right now I'm on the rotation with Golsonet and Jim Rocket. I was on the rotation.
Like-
I always have a lag from
1
one.
month, everyone has 1 month?
A month.
Okay.
Except for I was on a month with Ron Gerald and Jim, and then Ron Gerald and the mayor for 2 months. So it was so easy, but I'm back on the rotation.
But let me give you this example. When we first started with the town, the mayor his availability was very good, and he signed a number of, he still rotated, but yet he was available. And then the mayor started working on a project out in the Glades. There was a period of time, for about 8 months, where he just was not available. Even if we stayed a little later, I mean, he just couldn't get here because he wasn't able to get here. So, I mean, we couldn't hold up. We had to, again, as Per was saying, we go to the rotation or wherever we can get, but, if we can get the next rotated council member, fine. But there were sometimes we'd have to put in a call because you can't wait days and days and days to get the two desired that you want.
Well, I hope it's not the two decide you want. It's with whoever is up for the next round.
That's what.
I mean, when you say that, I'll pick the one. It seems like
Well, my
I don't
two
want to put the
desired
pressure on you.
The two desired are the ones that are on the rotation schedule for that time, not anybody else. I had put, like I said, I put it off for a day or two, but
Yeah.
we cut the check run is too close to when the bills are due. And one day waiting on somebody to come in, just anybody, to come in and sign the last check, we had a late fee on the credit card bill. And then the council got upset with the late fee, but I couldn't get it I couldn't walk it into the bank fast enough. And we stayed till 6 o'clock in the afternoon accommodating the council to come in and sign checks. So they have the ability to come in more than from 9 to 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have some-
Yeah, go ahead.
No, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Ken, you go ahead.
Not as a part of this committee, but I personally have been at your office. And Paula has gone to great lengths in finding the data that I requested and explaining it with visual examples, and gave me copies of the examples on many occasions. Now, I think maybe part of the problem is that when we get to this committee, we start looking at copies of checks, and I don't know if it's, but lots of times it's the signatures are the same signatures. But that's due to the same month's rotation that she's calling people on. And sometimes that may come up in our mind as, well, why are all these same representatives of ours signing these checks? Well, it's because of her rotation. So, I mean, if they truly, and I have no doubt from the information that I've gathered, that they're going through these phases of one person authorizing, another person printing, another person doing this, and by the time it gets to her, several people have already looked at it. But when it gets to us, we're seeing the same signatures. So I think that's only natural for us to think, well, why are these two guys always signing checks? Or girls,
Okay, I just had some simple little questions, and some of them will probably refresh it. I'm sorry, good. No, oh, I thought you used this. Page 20 of 111. Under road fund, if you could just remind me, it says new local option gas tax. We have all the different cents, so when I saw new, I was like, is there something you want to share? You got nervous when I saw the word new.
Assume this is a description. I would say that's probably the 1 to 6 cent versus the 1 to 5 cent. The old.
Because usually we say 5 and 6 cents. That's what.
Well, the lower number is the 5, and the larger number is the 6.
So the local option gas tax would be the 6 and the.
Well, they're both local option gas tax.
Right.
But the bigger number, the 20,000, 6, and the 9,000, 5.
Well, you trained us so well to ask
You're doing very well.
6 and 5, and
And all I can tell you is, if you go back in the legislation, you'll read somewhere they say this is the new gas tax.
Okay.
And that was the 1 to 6.
that's, so I know that new local option gas tax refers to the 5 cent. Okay, and then on page 21, and I stopped in and talked to Carla briefly. She explained to me we had a cost savings actually we are now purchasing the street signs ourselves, and we obtained a significant savings in doing this. So I just wanted to point that out to the committee. I didn't know if everyone was aware of that. The $2,193.50 is, I mean, it may look like a large amount, but I don't recall, Pearl had a specific, she was very, it was like, what, a 50% savings or something, close to it on this? I thought that was fantastic.
Not only that, but a lot of time savings, because the other company was based on a piggyback contract that was coming out of Cleveland.
And getting your time savings and getting them to the town.
Right, this is
That
a
was the
local
other-
vendor.
Right, so that was a pretty big deal. Page 22, on check number 5381, and this is the attorney's bill that actually, and it breaks down the charges, and Cheryl was talking, the 222 is on there, Cheryl's talking about. But my question is, I see sometimes general matters, and this always seems to be a large amount.
We don't have an answer for that. These bills all go to the council for approval before they ever are paid.
Right.
But I would tell you, general matters generally.
Is the kitchen sink?
Generally would mean his phone calls to council about the agenda, or any calls they may make to him. It would mean any calls he's talking to staff about as we're coordinating on the agenda preparation, or any other legal matters that I have to discuss with him. Any
That are
work-
not identified.
that are not identified in any of these other items, yes.
And if any of you have ever had an attorney, you can sneeze and get a bill.
That's what I was concerned about, if you're paying for the,
Yeah.
okay. Page 23, we, check number 5399, we paid $800 for rent. I'm gonna assume that's 2 months' rent that we paid, if the rent did not go up? Yeah,
That is
it did
2
2
months.
months.
It did, if you
Yes.
look in, if you look in the
Breakdown?
details, it says
Okay.
that there's 2 months worth of, for whatever month.
I figured Cheryl would catch, I was just staying on the summary. Page 24,
That was very good.
that's a good page, isn't it? Yeah, that's a nice page. And I see there's that $400,000 Bill promised us was gonna get moved to our capital improvement
It did?
fund. Yeah, that capital improvement fund is holding a lot of money. We ever gonna spend any of it?
I think that's a decision.
Is it burning a hole in your pocket?
Well, I'm just curious because here we've moved $400,000, and if I'm reading this right, it's now saying we're
That's
under.
just the general fund.
I know, but I'm just wondering, just a refresher, if you could remind me what was the significance or the necessity to move the $400,000 now?
During the budget process, there was discussion, deliberations about the CIP.
Right.
There was several items added and some deleted. A more significant one was the 200,000 for trails.
And the building?
And, now, the building was always in there. The trails and some other items that required additional funding.
Okay. All right, and then I see transportation fund, we moved 48,913, and we moved that to a general fund in the transportation fund, not to specific cents. The 48,913 due to from transportation fund?
The transportation, I believe, owed general fund that money, or we owed them.
But you can see on page 25, it's, we just put it under transportation fund, so I guess.
At the end of last year, we had to give them money to pay for some expenses.
The culvert, the 148.
Yeah, that was.
The 148 culvert.
So that 48,
Yeah.
Okay.
48,913 was the
That-
cost of the engineering and the cost of the.
okay, so
WDR
that's where that's
contract.
coming back to, that's why it's not under the specific cents. Okay, so that's the culvert. Page 37. And this is probably for Perla probably can answer this. I think it's just simply a correction in the general ledger or journal entry on February 6, 2013. The 37,636. Well, maybe it's not. The residential, that's just, okay.
That's just a bank account.
ladies.
The residential monthly service, is that solid waste or? I apologize, I saw the two amounts and I misread the little numbers after. I thought it was a debit and a credit. There's. That's it. The attorney was the big one for me on general matters.
Mark?
Yes, I had a question on one of the earlier pages. It mentioned that Frank Shiola was being paid to install the signs. I thought that was supposed to be part of the Water Control District's description of work.
That we've seen.
You're not paying him, in other words,
No, we're
Oh,
paying
yeah.
Frank. The water
for,
control.
for putting signs in?
We don't have an agreement with the water control district to do that.
Because originally, the signs were purchased by the first council, and the Water Control District installed them.
That may be correct. There's never been an agreement between the town and the district to do that. And quite frankly, our prices were a lot better than what the district was paying. In fact, they're using our vendor now.
Yes, I believe so.
I don't mean for the making of the sign,
No,
I
the
mean for the
installation,
installing.
yeah. Yeah, I don't have the answer to that, but there's no agreement for the district to do the signs.
Okay, any other questions, comments for 5A? Including bank reconciliation? Okay, we don't have any questions, comments, that's here for you. Do we have a motion?
I make the motion to approve.
Okay. Okay. Motion by Elise, second by Cheryl. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Okay, 5. Did we don't approve it? We have included 5B.
We don't approve them, we just.
Yeah, it's just for information.
Are you going to?
If there's questions, we can ask questions.
So, about anything, any question about the invoices? 5, B, review of planning and zoning invoices.
There's only one invoice.
Let's move on to 5C. Draft CAFA. Comments and financial report.
We are way ahead of last year's schedule.
Congratulations. Yeah.
We think we're gonna,
I don't know about way ahead, we're.
we haven't got it until.
Yes, that, we did have a time extension last week.
And we will, to the best of our knowledge, this is what is going to be finalized, and we'll be submitting it to GFOA Friday and Monday, and then it's going on the council agenda on
Probably the 16th.
the 16th. The net assets grew 316,000. It's good, 11.8%. Citywide assets. General fund had an increase of 359,000. The business activities you have are just solid waste. And if you recall, back in 2011, there was a deficit. We took care of that deficit. It was the end of 2012, so that now we have a little fund balance there of 31 available. I think the city's operating fine. I don't have a lot of comments. If you have an opportunity to read it, or you have any questions, I'm glad to try to answer them. The unassigned fund balance of general fund is $1,000,003, not $2 million, not $3 million, it's $1.3 million. And after we take our $400,000 out, it'll be a little less.
Question, when's our contract due, come up for renewal on solid waste?
This year,
When?
well, the current contract will end September 30th. We'll probably be putting a new RFP out in the next month or so, 2 months or so.
Okay, what's the general feeling there? Are we gonna be in a position to pay less, or is it gonna go up, or what? Because, you know, that 1 year after the hurricanes hit, man, they skyrocketed the prices, but we haven't had the hurricanes several years.
Well, my understanding is SWA just did some RFPs and I think let 3 new contracts, and I think they were very happy. I don't know if they were, it was definitely a cost savings from what they had by prior years, but, you know, they have the county in zones, and then they picked firms to go ahead and take care of certain areas that comprises these zones. And what I've heard, I haven't had a chance to investigate it, but I've heard they got some good prices.
Given that they're a much larger entity, would it benefit the town to look at piggybacking a contract that's already existing?
Either that or use the SWA's RFP, we may do that to save some time and see if it's already in place and, you know.
I'm thinking that they have a lot more leverage because they're picking up a lot more. If that was usable.
Guess I'll say that.
Save money.
A lot less trees to be blown down now than there were. It was 5 years ago. I mean, we cleaned it out pretty good, you know, so, I mean, it looks like there should be some cost savings somewhere. So that's all I'm saying.
Speaking of RFP, I don't think this committee has seen any RFP for the last year or two.
No.
Yeah, I
Except
know
the
that
banking one.
in the past that we used to see them. Have we issued any RFP recently or during your administration?
Well, they weren't RFPs. One was an invitation to bid and one was a request for qualifications. I think the last one you saw, we did bring banking to them.
Yeah, the
We
bank.
did the banking, yeah.
Because you were doing the.
So that was the only one that we have issued so far?
Well,
Within the last
we're-
2 months.
a lot of our contracts are at the stage where they were additional years on the original contract. There are several that are going to be coming due this year. Code enforcement, for example, solid waste, for example. I think auditing too, I'm not sure. I think auditing might be coming due.
No, I think they had about.
Did they get another, did they get
No,
another
that
year?
was just a couple of years ago.
The former management company wanted to get rid of it.
But yeah, we're doing a lot more this year than ever, you know. There's a few more that are coming due.
Have you done anything for the engineering firm?
I'm
Not
sorry,
in
say
a
that
what?
again?
I mean, that we used to have, what's the firm's
The
name?
engineering firm.
Engineering firm,
Right.
that's,
Engineering is the RFQ that we have, that we currently have out. We received, actually it closed on Friday, and we received 10 proposals, including the current provider. 10.
That's good.
Yeah, we get some competitors.
And the way we structured it was that we were looking for a general town engineer and then possibly some specialties in traffic engineering and surveying.
I hope that we are more prudent on giving them work. I know in the past, I personally have been very unhappy with the way that we deal with them. Sorry, Mark, you were one of the old former council, but they came to us at the last minute on the agenda, request for work, and then we gave to them. One good example is the grant writing. They produced zip.
We paid them $15,000.
We paid them a lot of money. I hope that,
This is our current vendor?
no,
Calendar, not.
yeah, have to be careful with that.
You actually did one, and didn't get paid.
But just I just want to remind this committee, I think that the way that the former administrative deal with them was very unprofessional. That without protecting the taxpayer.
Well, you may remember that whole scenario was a little bit difficult because not only did we not have a signed contract we discovered in our records, the vendor didn't have a signed contract
Exactly.
either in their records.
I mean, this is very bad.
Yeah.
I wish I was the IG with the county at the time. Maybe I could put somebody in jail. I'm serious, very bad. I think you learned a very hard lesson.
I think this one is important because we're at a point in time, a crossroads, if you will, where engineering services are going to be very important. Surveying services are going to be very important because the town is moving toward undertaking some projects, including in just to toss out one, the collecting canal ozone treatment that town council is entertaining. I mean, right now, it's pretty clear to everybody, and this is attorneys for both entities, the district and the town, that that whole area needs to be resurveyed before we do anything. So, I mean, and then, a lot of other projects that we're kind of stymied because we don't have that expertise on hand right now to be able to go to.
So the town will be picking up the tab for the surveying of collecting canal. Has that road been turned over to the town?
Potentially, if we go forward with that project, I said, if we go forward, it's,
Will we be paying for that before the road is turned over or after it's turned over? It seemed it's like the cart before the horse there, the way the wording was done. That's why I'm asking.
well, as you know, at the October 16th joint
Right,
workshop,
that's why I'm asking for
both the
clarification.
council and the board of supervisors of the water control district determined that all of the OJM roadways, as a result of separate agreements like Marsala and Compton, as part of the legislative act that dealt with 304A and those sections. F Road was a section that was off by itself. There are a number that we were going to move together to have these roads come into the ownership, or at least the control of the town. And we've been moving, maybe to my taste, a little too slowly, but we were starting to move in that direction. I'm charged with the responsibility of getting the collecting canal project going, because that is in our capital budget here. But by the same token, I'm not going to rush it and do a rash decision. We want to make sure that everybody agrees we need the survey. Now the question is, do we do the survey before the road is turned over? I don't think I want to go.
Well, my question is, who owns, you're doing this, who owns the there's a great expense in doing a survey.
Absolutely.
And when we did North Road, there was an expense, when the town did part of that and the district did part of that, but there was really no survey done immediately at that time that the road was
You
done.
may remember I was very
Yes, so
circumspect about that because of that reason.
right, so now this is going to be a much bigger project than what was done. It's just being done more properly and more cost intensively. What's going to happen on collecting canal, it's not going to be what happened on North Road.
I guess my response to you is, I think I would want to see progress. I would want to see that the road is coming into the town's ownership before we do a survey. If it looks like that's happening, and it's just a question of timing, then I can see going forward with the survey.
Well, did you not discuss that at the IGC meeting?
We did.
And what was the,
Well, all we did at the IGC meeting was basically Steve Yohe and myself provided an update to Mayor Browning was the town representative and John Ryan was the district representative. And we let them know what had transpired at the March 1st meeting between both Mr. Yohe, myself, Mike Cirillo, and members of some of the attorneys from Caldwell Pacheco. So it was just more or less an overview as to where we were and what was happening.
but have you worked out the issue of the Marcella, Compton, Bryant roads?
When you say have you worked out the issue, be more specific in terms of what you're...
Well,
I mean, yeah, there are issues that
So
I don't want to
that,
be critical here, but I think the district has moved slower than I would like to see them move.
yeah, I understand that, but.
We did a full-blown motion that included all the roadways. They had left Compton and Marcella out. I went before them and I asked them to amend their motion, to my understanding that they still haven't done that. Additionally, we were concerned because we saw the public facilities report, which all of a sudden added a new road into the district column that previously was ours. That being 6 Court North. So you have to understand our trepidation now, as you know, because we're not moving as fast as we should.
We don't know if the district is out there trying to abscond with more roads. We suspect they're
The
just.
roads are being
I'm sorry, you asked a question. I had to go there.
I mean, I guess, you know, I don't know what.
See, you started it.
I was just concerned about the cost of the survey and then we were getting the road around the survey.
Spun off.
Well, the Compton Road's got other issues that even the district cannot control.
No, Bryan Road, that's
Well,
right.
I mean,
Compton Road?
not collecting Canal Road
Yeah,
has issues beyond even the district. So
right.
who owns it is even beyond the district's control.
The owners themselves on Collecting Canal aren't sure who owns what.
Exactly.
I can tell you that.
Don't you, yeah.
Don't you even get to the middle of the road if you know where the
No,
middle is?
you don't know where the middle is.
No,
because-
we're all in the same boat.
Because when they do their grading, they, you know.
Years of now work.
It's anybody's guess where the middle of the road is.
So we all look
So I
forward to a
understand the
survey.
problem.
Okay, any other questions? Any comments?
But, I mean, are we making progress on it, or is there something that still needs to be done? Because I thought that the Water Control District had received the advice they needed from their legal counsel to proceed with Marcella and Compton, and Bryan, I thought, needed easements.
We're making progress, albeit more slowly than I'd like to see. I do think that Mr. Jody has been very cooperative, and I expect that to continue, and that will probably be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, what, I mean, do we have, like, take Bryan Road, for example, and that's one of the ones that came out as, was it a district road, or, you know, the district roads, as they understand it, are the roads that they are, their legislative statute, 298, says are theirs. And those are the letter roads, Collecting Canal, North Road, you know, but not Marcella, Bryan, and Compton. So I think the hesitancy on their part to turn those over was they didn't think that they owned them in the first place until some documents
You
surfaced
just
that
look at
indicated
the
that
clerk of the court that says, yeah, that's the
it
district.
says, yes, yeah, I don't think they were aware of that. So now they've been made aware of that. And is there agreement now on those roads? I mean, whatever, I thought instructions were given to their attorney to say, please put a motion together that advises the town that we do not want to hold on to these roads. And
I have not heard that motion. I mean, unless I
that's
missed
what I
it.
had heard. I mean, but then,
Do you remember that motion? I don't.
No.
I can see, we talked about I can see.
Oh, no, I didn't, no, she's not talking about, then I missed the last water district meeting too.
Yeah, but
so.
it didn't happen at the last one. There was nothing.
No, nothing happened at the
She's
last
talking,
meeting,
I
but I
just
thought
see-
that, you know, in between, that issue had been resolved as far as the attorneys and.
Well, I will say this, it appeared from our March 1st meeting that Caldwell Pachetti has done a lot of work, specifically I think his name is Mr. Wade, is one of the attorneys.
Okay.
He's done a lot of research in terms of the 1918 deed of easement and all that stuff. But, you know, we're still, you know, October was what, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, and we're still
And I
going
think
slow.
Stephen
You know?
Yodi had a conversation also with, what is it? Southern
He
Chamber.
did, yeah, he did.
So I hope we can, you know, get this done because it does affect people, particularly the Bryan Road. And Bryan Road is a different situation because Bryan Road, nobody's got any easements at all unless there are some you know, recorded on the.
It wasn't handled by
individual
Compton
properties.
and Marcelli, exactly right.
Yeah, and so, do we have a process in the town for setting up or establishing that procedure?
We've talked about a process, it's not cemented yet in any, but, you know, even as it relates to the non-district, what's called the non-district roads, we, you know, our feeling is that before we make any improvements, that we would like all the property owners on that road to surrender that, what's considered that portion of the road to the town, either via a quitclaim deed or
Right,
some other instrument. And, you know, so we're not incurring any liability in
Well, do we
taking,
have a
making an improvement that we don't have the
documented
right to make otherwise.
do we have a documented process for them doing that? Do we have forms drawn out or any plans?
Mr. Cirillo is supposed to be working on some forms for us.
Okay, so it's really the town and the Bryan issue that we're waiting for.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that, on the Bryant, I mean,
Before you even have the forms, you gotta go get a survey. Each one of these little pieces requires a survey.
that's true.
You gotta have the survey.
Just survey
How do you
the
know
whole
where
You
it's-
could
place.
survey yourself or Compton,
I-
you could
I
slap
would-
the stuff down.
I would think you would want a survey so you know what your legal boundaries are.
Well,
From
but not if
pavement to
it's gonna be an
pavement.
easement, you know, not if it's an easement.
I understand, but it should actually, I think the statute
That's not
says
gonna happen.
own, operate, and control. I think that's what the statute says.
Question. Who technically owns B Road from Southern Boulevard to Okeechobee? Is it the town or is it the water district?
The water control district.
I would presume it's the district, yes.
Well, the district claims that the joint meetings clearly stated with no common sense behind it, I'll be the first one to say that. A road must be owed, the district owns it. If it's, once it's owed, it will be turned over to the town. I've got a whole 2-hour dissertation on that topic that I'm gonna avoid, but that's cut and simple. Right now, the consensus between the town and the district was, it's the district's until Ogen goes down.
Okay.
District must want B Road for a long time.
Okay. Who's responsible for the bridge? Yeah, I'm
Water
serious.
control district. so I-
Water control.
Yeah, I have brought that up many a time. When's the last inspection that's been done on either one of those bridges on Collecting Canal or on B Road?
Well, that I can't tell you, but I can tell you that the developers who verbally promised roadway improvements to the town council in a number of meetings, met with Mr. Sonnier when he was here during his tenure to find out what the district's position was relative to improvements to the bridge cross-section as it relates to the overall improvements of the B Road.
And what was said, I mean, what?
Oh, he laid out, there's a whole series of recommendations that I believe, if I remember correctly, was also taken to the Board of Supervisors of the district, and they approved Mr. Sonnier's recommendations as it relates to the bridge. What made that a little bit crazy was, at one point in time, I know Councilman Gerald was hoping that maybe a roundabout would be located.
To which Mr. Sonia responded the cost was overwhelmingly high.
Well, it was more costlier, and you would have to start taking a lot more property in order to make the radius on some of those properties.
Right.
And you know, and obviously, the two developers who are gonna pay for the improvements, I mean, you know, they're not crazy about it, if it's gonna be, be more costly for them,
Right.
so. But I think that in that case, the district was the one who wasn't, all that crazy about the roundabout either.
Okay, so the bridge is in their corner. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comment regarding the cable?
I think we had a good year, got a lot done. I think we do have now $1.4 million for capital improvements. Hopefully we'll start spending some of those funds to accomplish the goals and objectives of the plan.
What about the management letter?
Haven't got the management letter yet.
does the auditor decide to come to present it?
Pardon me?
The auditor, do they intend to come to present the
It
management?
was my discussion with the auditor, because he was very busy, that I can present the chapter to you. I'm
The
trying to
Kim is
avoid
fine.
him a meeting
The case is fine, I would like the auditor to present the,
to the council.
no, the management as well.
The management letter.
I thought this is their responsibility.
I didn't know that it would be a necessary item.
I think if they have findings, I'd like to leave it.
Oh, I think you'll see. Don't worry. You will
No,
see. I'll be glad to bring it forward. I like to bring findings
No,
forward.
no, I mean that this is their responsibility to present it to the committee regarding the findings.
Well, I think the responsibility is to the council,
I know, but we,
not to the committee.
yes, we are, that's why we call ourselves.
We're the audit committee.
I understand. But
Yes, we have to set it first before.
we will be submitting it, whether the committee sees it or not,
Yeah,
by
we-
the first.
I will object that. Please bring it to us first.
I can't get it to you.
No, I mean the management letter. Now, this is fine, I mean, we good. Management letter, I mean, I think we could have a motion to accept it. But regarding the audit findings, it should come to us first.
Oh.
If you're not clear.
Fine.
Are we,
Yeah.
I don't know why you would need.
We
to-
are the audit
that.
committee.
I mean, if he's
And
giving you
that's where the
the,
ordinance is.
This is
if
the-
he's giving you a written report, I don't know what.
no, the management letter come to us first.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we always
don't
did
know
that.
what the need would be for him to be here to do it.
I-
If I could
Oh,
just
no.
present it to you.
I think if the finding is important, I think we need to ask the comments. I think it's fair.
Trying to avoid that excess time on the part of the auditor.
I know, but it's a fixed fee.
That's fine.
It's a fixed fee, right?
16.
It's a
I
fixed
don't-
fee.
It is a fixed fee.
Good, and they should, it's public cost.
He likes to talk to us anyway.
Yeah, I think it's important, I'm
That was not the
serious.
indication.
This is,
He likes getting the check, right?
okay,
I would think it would be contrary.
if the committee doesn't understand, I will be clear. It is our responsibility.
It is. Yes, it is.
I like,
Read the ordinance, that's what it says.
even
And
if,
refers to state
what
law.
if, and I want them to tell us if they have any disagreement with you guys.
They don't have any discrimination.
I don't,
Yeah,
I-
but we
I-
can't
I'm
let
not asking you.
tell us not.
I'm sure they don't, but.
We can't take your word for it.
Correct, that is
If you
correct.
cannot, then maybe you should not have that here.
That's her opinion. Okay, we are looking forward to see that,
We are not the ones that do have it
I remember that when Spencer was here, he had somebody else coming, that we have to pay for.
Oh, yeah. The management company charged us to explain the financials to us.
We're not trying to remind you.
We're not trying to suggest
Very
anything.
good chip.
I do see the mileage claimed by Mark.
Well, I guess the issue is, and the council will not be getting this at the 16th meeting.
Which one, this one?
No, they won't get it. Because if you've got to see the management letter, that won't be until
Well,
something.
I think we can have a motion to accept the CAFA, but I do
I
think
understand.
we need to have the management letter. I think.
Well, I think you should have the minutes.
Okay, good,
I have
good.
every intention that you
Good,
get.
then I think your comment would be unrelated to our demand.
Well, I just didn't know if you, the issue is, if you want the management letter before it gets to the council, then we have to put off the council receiving the cap.
It's your call.
Okay?
If you look at the ordinance, I think we are
I
charged.
think it's a resolution.
Yeah, okay, resolution. If you look at the resolution, we are charged with responsibility.
We are.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know you actually.
It is.
We actually are the audit committee.
I understand, I just didn't realize you actually did the audit.
We did audit?
Yeah. Review the audit.
We do.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I think if we are not happy, we tell them that we are not happy.
That's fine.
No, that's why, it's our job,
That's our
Bill.
job.
I understand.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion to accept the CAFA, the Comprehensive Annual Funds Report?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Okay,
second.
motion by Cheryl, second by Elise. Any more discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Did the chairman vote?
Huh?
Did the chairman vote?
Aye, yeah.
Okay, okay, I didn't hear to see him.
Motion carries.
I just wanted to make
5 to
sure.
0.
Let's see, 6 closing comments on oh, Phil, do you have a question about, I'm sorry, I missed your hand. No, I just raised your hand.
No, just earlier on, same thing what Virginia was saying regarding the survey, it's a lot of cost. And the two issues. Number one, the general public going to say that we are spending a lot of money on surveys that actually just on some properties and not all. In that case, what about all the other property? I would like my place surveyed too, you know? So that's true. So that means the town is spending some money on some property and not other properties.
Well, they aren't surveying the private
No, we're
property.
just
The
doing.
roadways, the
Right.
roadways, yes, of course, that's what I'm referring to. I do understand that, but like I said, it's two things.
Like that.
The public is going to say we are spending, we will, like I said, it's costly. Number two, we need to be explaining why on the road property and not the others. And expect a lot of comments and things from the public. And this will be a big chunk of expense for us. I understand that, but others need to know. Would you agree?
Well, I
It's
think,
big enough.
you know, that should be really a topic for the IGC and for Mark to work with Steve and see what's out there that's already been done, because I don't know. When the last survey was done on Collecting Canal, I know the district has had a rotation of doing surveys on all the letter roads, and A Road was the last one to be done, and it was done before the OJM went down. But if there's not a recent survey, then, you know, we might need to do that. It would be a judgment call.
Well, we don't really have any recent surveys in any of the non-district roads.
Right, I think we have to be careful because, you know, what we found in trying to work with these OJM issues is that it really can, if you're trying to transfer ownership of a property, or if you have to do individual surveys and individual transfers, it really becomes cost prohibitive. I mean, it's more expensive than the road itself, you know, just to do the legal work. So we had, you know, done you know, and it was controversial, you know, when we did the OJM roads, that we submitted a bill to the legislature, and, you know, that basically stated that the property in the road, you know, is a public right-of-way, dedicated to the public, not the district, not the town, just dedicated to the public, and, you know, it caused some controversy, but if we hadn't done it that way, I don't think we could have ever done any roads, because the legal, and since the landowners were paying for it, you know, it would have, the people who got compensated for their property would have received, you know, a lot more legal expense than the payment would have justified. It would have cost everybody, even the people who were, you know, giving their easements. So, but, I mean, I think that's just a word for wise, because we don't have unlimited budgets. We've got $1.5 million in our capital improvement fund, and, you know, we want to get, I'm sure the residents would prefer that we actually accomplish something.
Yeah, know what the plan is forward.
And, yeah, but I mean, I'm just sharing experience there.
One thing to bear in mind, we've also talked about that we also believe possibly the surveying is an appropriate expense on the 5-cent gas tax.
Is what?
But we don't
That
have
would-
it in,
Subject to us putting it into the comprehensive plan.
subject to it being.
That could fall.
Which we have an amendment we're working.
Yeah, but I would, again, see if, you know, when the latest one was done, and who it was done by, and how reliable it was.
But I agree with Member Johnson over there. I think he had the statement of the night when he talked about Collecting Canal. I mean, The last surveys were done a long time ago, and based upon the grading and all that, I mean, I don't think you can count on anything in any part of the town, other than the recent surveys done with the ocean. I think everything else is a big guess.
Could
It
be.
may only be a foot, but good, yeah.
So any other comment, Phil? March?
No, under old business, I'm gonna.
Oh, I thought we were done.
With the management
Another
plan
copy?
for the next meeting.
No, where is it? Next.
He's gonna put the management letter under.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Do you have any more comments? March?
I had several landowners ask when would the attorney's contract come up for renew or review or consideration. There is a lot of dissension about some of the actions and motions and so forth of the law firm. And that all fits in with your RFPs and everything. That's why I brought it up now.
You know, we'll investigate that. I'm trying to think. You know, I don't even know if I've ever looked at their contract, to be very honest with you. And I don't know what have you looked at it, Pearl?
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's pretty open-ended to answer your question. I mean, that'd be my
It's year
general.
to year, yeah. They haven't, there hasn't been an RFP since the town.
Well, we want to look at it again and then get comments from the council, see what they want to do. Or if there's a terms on it, if not, I don't know, it's up to them.
Well, are you making a motion to that
No,
effect, or
no,
would you
absolutely
wait
not.
do you want to wait till we bring it back to you next meeting?
Let you guys decide.
Bring it back next meeting?
I don't want to, you know.
Okay, you don't want to see it, you don't want to make a motion, so what am I saying?
Well, it's a comment from the public. I mean, I don't want to react to the
I
public.
understand, but
Nothing. It's up to you guys. I don't want to make any management decision.
Well, you manage
It's not-
the
it's not-
contract.
Let you guys do it. If
The
you
management manages
think-
the contract.
I would tell you that's not, I would just say that's not for us to do, I'll tell you why, because we don't hire the attorney, the
Okay.
council hires the
Okay.
attorney. So,
So it's the
I mean, if
council.
you want to make a recommendation to council that they consider doing something with their attorneys, but
My
that's not the
recommendation-
management
I
company's
think
call.
Mark, maybe
Public comment.
Let the public,
That's
the
not-
committee,
That's not our turf.
Yeah, it's just a comment in the public, it's not.
any more comment, March? Let's finish.
You're on a roll, Marge, go ahead.
I will bring it up under public
Okay.
comment, stating that several residents have approached me and wondered what the term of the contract was.
Any more comment?
Do I take it then that everything else besides the attorney, you guys get a RFP for? Or am I incorrect? If
My
it's
point was,
over-
we're responsible for the management, we are the two entities that the town council hires directly are the management company and the town attorney.
Mhm.
Okay, so we don't have any say over what happens at the town attorney, other than making maybe a recommendation if we're
Right.
asked.
Right.
As far as the other vendors, yes, council still approves all those, but they come under the direction of the management company,
Yeah.
as the general manager.
Right. Right, okay.
Okay, committee.
You just don't want.
One day.
What's your